Hey everyone, it's Skylar. Welcome back to my channel. We are on to day 2 of 28 days of wrestling reviews challenge month. Today's review is going to be on this DVD. I don't know if you can see it because of the glare. Yeah, it's the TLC Tables, Ladders and Chairs DVD. Approx running time 55 minutes. It came out on this in 2011, but all the matches that they were talking about came from the year 1999 to 2000. It stars Matt and Jeff Hardy, Edge, Christian, and Devon and Bubba Ray, the Dudley Boyz. So yeah, I'll just read you the synopsis of it, this little bit, and then I'll go on to what I've jotted down. There's a little bit that goes, I've wrote first, which I saw at the beginning. So I'll read you that little bit that happened and then go into it. So yeah, Hardy Boyz, Dudleys and Edge and Christian have raised the bar on tag team matches to new heights. Their ladder matches are already the stuff of legends, and they've never met a table they didn't break. If you like over-the-top action, high-flying and excitement, this DVD is for you. So, yep, so, notepad again. It shows a face, Bubba Ray putting Tori through a table, Christian and Jeff Hardy being thrown off a ladder onto the ropes, Matt Hardy hitting Bubba Ray Dudley with a chair, Devon crashing through a table, Jeff Hardy doing a swanton bomb from the top of the ladder, and then it comes on to like the title, which has got TLC Tables, Ladders and Chairs, and then it starts from this. Like, they're all talking, and this is what they're like talking about. So here we go. Edge and Christian doing the 5-second pose with a goofy glasses and big foam cowboy hats that were red and green when they was tag team champions. Then the Dudley Boyz doing their typical pose when they got to the ring. Sorry, my hair's fixing my hair. Yep. And then Matt and Jeff Hardy having their hands raised in victory after winning their match. Dudley Boyz specialise in a tables match, if you don't already know. Hardy Boyz specialise in a ladders match, and Edge and Christian specialise in a chairs match. They like using chairs. It goes on to the Hardy Boyz, Matt and Jeff, who in real life are actually brothers, and start to talk about being wrestlers, growing up and saying about watching pay-per-views and then portraying different characters. Then it goes on to Matt Hardy as a character called High Voltage, and he gives a promo as this character, High Voltage, and Jeff Hardy then after that does a promo as a character called the Wolverine. And then Matt then talked about dreaming of becoming wrestlers. Then it goes on to Bubba Ray Dudley talking about him growing up, and he loves the physical side of wrestling, which, even though Bubba Ray and Dudley, in wrestling they're half brothers, but in real life they're like bestest friends. Yeah, talking about him growing up, like he was a high school shop porter and he was doing well in them sorts of stuff, like shop port, like athletics and all that. And he loves the physical side of wrestling as well as the theatrical side of wrestling. That's how he got into it. And like he went to wrestling school and then done some indie stuff. And he was also partly trained by Terry Funk, and then went on to part indies and then ECW and then the WWE. Devon Dudley then says that he was trained by former superstar Johnny Ross. And then Christian says that this is what he's always wanted to do, as he's always worked hard to get to the WWE and never stopped until he got there. Then Edge talks about confidence, and talked about he and Christian being trained at the same wrestling school. And then it goes back to Jeff and Matt Hardy, and they talk about their first debuts matches. Jobbers. If you don't know what jobbers are like opponents for like the wrestlers that aren't like actual superstars, so they call them jobbers. And it was back in 1994, which it was like the 23rd of May 1994 on Monday Night Raw in Youngstown, Ohio, where Matt Hardy was wrestling Hall of Famer Nikolai Volkov. It was his first televised match, but his 7th match in total in a hard ring. And Jeff wrestled Scott Hall, which was known in the WWE as Razor Ramon, on the same night. As Matt wrestled Nikolai Volkov, and Jeff then come on and said that they hated being jobbers at that time, and Jeff was complaining a lot, so they left. And he was saying, well, I don't want to do this again, but like the next night he come back as a jobber and faced 1-2-3 Kid, which is Sean Waltman, which is also known as X-Pac, and enjoyed that match against him better. And after that, this was what they always wanted to do. And then they got asked who was their inspiration to get in the business. Devon answered, and his, like, how can I explain this? Also in the wrestling, you have a character that's a face, which is a good guy, and a heel guy, which is a bad guy. So Devon said that his favourite face guy, which is a good guy, is Hulk Hogan, and talked about how his presence walking down the ring and all the fans like trying to get a glimpse of him and trying to get the hands out to touch Hogan and stuff like that. He enjoyed everything like that. And then he goes on to say his favourite heel guy was Roddy Piper, and saying like he was so amazing on the mic that people wanted to just jump into the television and give him a little slap and stuff like that. But he said he just really enjoyed Piper's performance, and he'd never ever seen somebody like that cut a promo as a heel the way that Piper did in the 80s. Yeah. Then Bubba Ray then answers that his two favourites was Ric Flair as a heel. Ooh. Ooh. Ooh, sorry about that. Things like that happen. His favourite heel was Ric Flair, and just loved how his presence was and his persona was walking down the aisle. And he loved how sometimes that he'd get booed, and then when he was in his hometown he'd get cheered. And then Bubba Ray was talking about his other favourite wrestler, that was Terry Funk. As Terry Funk like sort of like mentored him, and they were together for quite a few years in ECW, so they bonded. And he said he's not just like my mentor, he's like my friend on a professional level and a personal level. Then Matt Hardy says that his favourite was Michael P.S. Hayes from the Fabulous Freebirds, because Michael P.S. Hayes, when the Hardys debuted as superstars in 98, don't quote me on that one, but I think it was 1998, he was their manager, he was their guide, he made sure that they were on the right track. And then Matt was saying that his other favourite wrestler was Mick Foley, and how much respect he has for Mick Foley. And even Mick Foley was asked Matt and Jeff on another one of his titles, which I will be reviewing soon, so I won't go into that. I'll talk more about that when his one of these gets reviewed. And even Jeff said that he looked up to Mick, and that Mick Foley is one of his favourite wrestlers, and is still to this day he's always going to be his favourite wrestler. And all their favourite rivalries was Shawn Michaels versus Razor Ramon in the ladder match. And how dynamic they changed the face of wrestling back in 1995 by doing a ladder match. But believe it or not, talking of ladder matches, everyone thinks it was Shawn Michaels that created the first ladder match. It wasn't. It was Bret Hart. Back in, I think it was late 91, early 92. He was the first person that was ever in a ladder match. So that's a little bit of trivia for you to know about. So anyway, Edge and Christian first arrived in the WWE as part of a group called The Brood with Gangrel. And they both enjoyed the whole concept of the Brood and the Bloodbath. Then Gangrel turned his back on Edge and Christian and went with Matt and Jeff to become the new Brood. And then Michael P.S. Hayes came out and said, like, what are you doing? Like, I'm supposed to be your manager. And then there's Michael P.S. Hayes, who was known at the time as Doc Hendricks in the WWE. Forgot to mention that. Matt and Jeff double teamed him and knocked him out. And then when Matt and Jeff and Gangrel came to the ring, they were known as the New Blood, the New Brood, and they started to prove themselves by having tag team ladder matches, which solidified them as a top tag team at the time. And then they both talk about what new techniques they can do in a ladder match. At that match took place at No Mercy in 1999, in which the Hardy Boys won the match, and the Hardy Boys basically the Hardy Boys won like money. I think it was like $500,000 or $250,000, and then they got the managerial services of Teddy Reynolds. And then when the Hardys left, Edge and Christian were in the ring and they got a standing ovation. And they earned their respect and pride from the other superstars backstage. Then the Dudleys decided to knock it up a little bit and use a table to drive Matt and Jeff Hardy through a table and walk away. Then Jeff uses a chair and puts him through a table, and then Jeff swanton bombs. That was Jeff Hardy's finisher. He swantons Devon through a table, which sets up a first ever tables match. Then Bubba Ray drives an ambulance lady through a table. Then they say that being put through a table, hit with a chair and a ladder is real and it hurts. And then they talk about the crowd response, like the crowd reactions they get during these matches. Then the tag team table match happened at Royal Rumble 2000, which it was the first one ever between the Dudley Boyz versus the Hardy Boys, and the Hardy Boys won that match with Jeff Hardy swanton bombing Devon through a table, literally in the match, to end the match. Then on Raw, the Dudley Boyz put Teddy Reynolds through a table, and a few weeks later, the Dudleys put Mae Young through a table, not once but twice. And then after that, that was Bubba Ray's thing, sitting on the top rope, getting the girls up in the air and then slamming them through a table. And then he done it to Lita, and then he also done it to Trish Stratus. Then at WrestleMania 16 was the first ever triangle ladder match between the Hardys, Dudleys and Edge and Christian, in which Edge and Christian won the tag team titles in that match. And then when they all got backstage, it was Shawn Michaels. He was the first person to congratulate the six of them backstage. And this match was the first of a few TLC matches between the three teams. And they say that tag team wrestling is, at that time, it was stronger than ever, than it's ever been. And there will be more, they said that there'll be more TLC matches to come. So I'll end on this quickly. what these three started has now progressed to an actual pay-per-view called TLC, which is every December of every year, where in that pay-per-view it's tables, ladders and chairs. It's completely legal, and it was these three teams that personified this phenomena to happen even to this day. So my thoughts on this, to be honest, this was a first time watch for me. It was brand new, factory sealed. I'd never ever opened it. It was the first time ever I opened it, and it was the first time I ever seen it. And for me, I really enjoyed this documentary. It was enough amount of time, and I mean an enough amount of time to do a documentary about this. It's never been done before, like this documentary at that time, and it was nice to hear about where the three teams have come from and how they grew up and when they wanted to become in the wrestling business and how they come into the wrestling business and all like the step ups of the matches that they had before the three of them started using tables, ladders and chairs, and then combining it all together in one unique match, which the first ever one happened at WrestleMania 16. Even though they said it was a ladder match, it was actually more a TLC style match, which prominated into quite a few more, and then absolutely made its way to a pay-per-view event every year. So to be honest, this DVD in itself is an absolute fantastic DVD. It's packs a punch, and it gives you a new understanding of what tables, ladders and chairs is all about. And to be honest, I really enjoyed it, this DVD. I really enjoyed it a lot. I just liked everything about it, especially when they were talking about how they got into the business and talking about Matt and Jeff's personas, what they used to do growing up, and then when they become jobbers in the WWE in '94, and then Edge and Christian talking about when they got trained, and then it all combining all together. So, yep, rating for this, I'm going to actually give it an 8 out of 10. It was packed to the punch. I understood everything what happened, and I loved how unique it was. And they were talking about, as I just said, they were talking about like from childhood to training to looking up to, and even explaining which wrestlers they looked up to, so which made them get into the business in the first place, which is another thing that I enjoyed. So yeah, well, that's day 2 sorted. Day 3 will be up tomorrow, hopefully. So of course, I hope you enjoyed this review of TLC ladders and chairs from the Attitude Collection. Stay gaudy, have unpleasant dreams, and I'll see you soon. Ta-ta for now, bye.